The crosses are all veiled. The doors of the great altarpiece in the Resurrection Chapel are closed, lest our eyes be dazzled by the gilding and polychrome, for we have entered Passiontide. Passiontide, the last fortnight of Lent. Passiontide, as it were, the super Lent. Lent ratcheted up a further degree. Whatever austerities we may have been keeping throughout the whole season of Lent, for this last fortnight, as we approach the time of the Passion of our Lord Jesus Christ, they too are ratcheted up. This is the most sombre, this is the most solemn season of the Church's year. So, as you would expect of me today, I'm going to preach about Ken Dodd. Ken Dodd was a most remarkable and extraordinary comic. I heard him once live, perhaps twice actually, but certainly once. And if you worked in the professional theatre, particularly if you were on the stage crew side or something like that, you dreaded and longed for Ken Dodd coming to do his show in your house, because you were guaranteed absolutely a full house. You could sell as many tickets as the people you could cram into. But the problem was, he would never stop. He would never end his show. Whatever time it was supposed to end, he would carry on and on and on. And there are several times, I'm told, where the only way to get the show to stop was actually by them switching off the lights and pulling out the plug and going home, because he would have probably carried on for until the following morning. He was, of all performers, the most generous, the most giving. And he was a strange comic, because a lot of his material was just stupid, actually, really, really silly, and also really not the kind of thing, sort of vulgar, but vulgar in the old sense. I don't mean vulgar in the sense of rude or suggestive, but vulgar in the sense of really a bit much. But he drew you in, or almost everyone, in fact, just about everyone, whoever you were. After a while, you joined in and realized that what he created was a world of baroque lunacy, a sort of surreal thing, of utter surrealistic madness that was hysterical. And he laughed not at other people. He did not create humour out of belittling other people's faults, a very common trope among comedians, of course, particularly nowadays. He did not create humour from a sense of superiority, a shared superiority with the audience. We know better than those other people we are laughing at. That's the basis of a great deal of comedy. No. Above all, he laughed at himself. He was the clown, he was the fool, he was the chump, and he invited us to laugh at him. And in so doing, enabled us to appreciate the absurdity of our own lives, the absurdity of our own concerns, the absurdity of taking ourselves seriously. To say that I believe Ken Dodd to be a Christ-like figure may possibly be pushing the envelope a bit, but I do believe there are things that can be drawn off, things, as it were, that can be seen linking the two. Because, of course, what angered the holy people of Jesus' day was the fact that he didn't take himself seriously, or not seriously in the way they thought he should. Jesus broke, I know I say this over and over again, but it still needs saying, Jesus broke all the taboos, all the rules, which made sure that you didn't enter into ritual uncleanness, that you did nothing which, as it were, possibly compromised your own purity. Jesus broke those rules, ignored them, didn't take himself seriously in that kind of way. Whatever we might think of the figure of Jesus, it's perfectly clear that he wasn't solemn. He enabled other people to see themselves in the eyes of God. By not judging people, other people, from a position of superiority, I believe that Ken Dodd could be said to have been almost an incarnational comic. What we learn about God in Jesus Christ is that God does not stand over and above his creation, judging it, and of course condemning it for its failures. In Jesus of Nazareth, God enters into his creation, shares its life alongside, and as we approach the Passion and Crucifixion, enters into the worst ridicule that can be directed at anyone. Ken Dodd's humour was ridiculous, ludicrous. It pulled the mat under him and under ourselves, lest we become too solemn and too serious and too self-important. The audiences left the theatre when they were finally allowed to leave. The audiences left the theatre knit together, joined with each other, gales of laughter, full of joy, the absurdity of the human condition leading to fellowship, fun, a sense that what we do together is more important than that which separates us. And humour links me now to the second half of my sermon, because if on this day I commemorate and give thanks for Ken Dodd, so I do for Stephen Hawking. 2 deaths this last week, 2 absolutely remarkable human beings. We are privileged that they were our countrymen. Hawking had the most extraordinary sense of humour, and also that same, he joined with Ken Dodd in this, that he didn't take himself too seriously, perfectly happy to appear on an episode of The Simpsons, perfectly happy to, as it were, use his position of one of the greatest minds of the time for comic relief. No sense of needing to stand on dignity, lest to be mocked or ridiculed, but almost inviting it himself to undermine critics and to prove that, yes, despite everything, he is one of us. What I've learned from the biographies, from the obits, which I didn't know, I may have heard but I've forgotten, was that Ken Dodd actually was a very serious churchman. He used to worship very much at his parish church and was a great supporter of Liverpool Cathedral, his parish church in Knotty Ash, which apparently is not a made-up place, it really exists. And so Dodd worshipped there, worshipped at the cathedral. Stephen Hawking, of course, was not a believer in God, wavering between atheism and agnosticism. Although it seems to me from his writings and his sayings that actually his agnosticism is more valuable than some of the black and white faith that some believers go on about so very much. Hawking lived an extraordinary life, crippled by a shocking and wicked disease. He overcame that. He overcame that and revealed to us truths about the cosmos, truths about the universe, which no one else had seen his work showed us new things. And I believe of the many attributes of God, one of the greatest is that God is truth. There's no truth which is apart from God. There's no truth which is separate from God. All that is true is, as it were, comes from God. And as Hawking's work enables us to see more and more about the universe, what it doesn't do is, as it were, to push God, for those few sad people who still choose to believe in him, more and more to the edge. The cracks in which God can still exist become smaller and smaller and smaller as our understanding grows. No, the opposite happens. The more we know about this extraordinary universe, then the greater is our knowledge of God. The greater is our sense of awe and wonder at what God has done, above all, at what God is doing, what God does now, and now, and now. They might seem like twin poles, like the very opposites of the human condition. An absurd, ludicrous comedian, one of the finest scientific minds of this generation and of any generation. But I would say that they are both united in this. They demonstrate the extraordinary, infinite richness of the human condition. What the human mind and imagination and willpower can create and do. And in both of these great men's work, I believe that they never pointed towards themselves, but pointed beyond themselves, at us, at the universe, and above all, therefore, to God. So, perhaps this Passiontide, one of the austerities we may take on is not taking ourselves too seriously. We might think that the absurdity of the universe starts most of all in our own lives and what we get up to and what we think. And we may think that rather than being something which God angrily condemns, perhaps he too rather laughs at it and finds it funny. And we may also think that the greatest thing we've yet found in the universe is the human brain and the human imagination, and that we are given this extraordinary ability to explore and question and seek and create. This is the work of God, and you and I, we are privileged that we may play some part in it. May God rest their souls. May God grant to them eternal peace. And I believe that today there is far greater than ever before laughter in heaven. Amen. Amen.